most new ideas are stupid, dangerous, and counterproductive.
And they're the ones that change the world.
well, they are sometimes. They are sometimes. But there's a subset of new ideas that, even though new ideas are dangerous and disruptive and often counterproductive and generally don't result in a productive company, some of them are absolutely necessary, and they're the thing you need to do next. And so, and that's a very difficult problem to solve, because it's the fundamental problem of innovation. It's like most innovations aren't justified or warranted, but some of them are absolutely crucial. So how do you distinguish between them? And the answer is, well, we don't know. The part of the way that you do that in a dynamic economy is you let and encourage a whole host of entrepreneurs to produce their ideas, and you let almost all of them fail. It's kind of painful for the entrepreneur. The other thing you see often with entrepreneurs is that they fail a lot before they succeed. And so, I mean, you have to be pretty damn spectacularly lucky to have your first idea, when you don't know what the hell you're doing, be a spectacular success. The other thing that happens with the artistic and maybe the entrepreneurial types too is that they end up with contempt for the business end of the process, and that's a real mistake, you know. And one of the things that I tell people who are artistically oriented, let's say, so they're in the entrepreneurial category, is, look, it's virtually impossible for you to monetize your product. That's the first thing you have to understand. So maybe you'll get lucky and you'll figure out a strategy. But if you add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that impossibility, you can be bloody well sure that all you're going to do is starve. So you better drop your contempt for the sales and marketing end of this if you want to sustain yourself through your life. And that's going to be a prerequisite for your creative endeavor.
Yeah.
And so, and art schools and establishments like that do an absolutely dreadful job of...
Well, they don't teach it.
I
was an artist. I was an artist. I went through art school.
Yeah.
They don't teach it.
No.
Never once.
No, I know. And it's, and I mean...
How are you going to commercialize your venture? How are you going to pay for your mortgage? What, just...
How are you going to buy food?
Yeah, with just a paintbrush and a canvas.
Oh, Jesus. And artists are in particularly dire position, because as a visual artist, for example, you're not only competing with all the visual artists that now exist, and there's plenty of them, but you're also competing with all the dead artists who who already have an established reputation and a body of work that's being still being exchanged in the marketplace. Yeah. And so you don't want to add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that. And you also probably have to understand that if you want to be an artist, that you're also going to have to have another job.
Yeah.
Because it's just, unless you want to bang your head against the wall until it's bleeding. It's so hard. And I mean, I've known some people who are outstanding artists, and I've known very, very few. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who was able to make a living from the outset of their career as a non-commercial visual artist. Brutally difficult. Yeah. So, and adding contempt to that is not helpful. You should be very thankful that sales and marketing people exist. Even though I know there's that, what would you call it, the mercantilist commercial element to it that is sort of, in some sense, you can consider it distasteful from the perspective of higher aesthetics, but don't confuse your ignorance of something important, sales and marketing, with your moral purity. That's a big mistake. It's a big ethical mistake, and you will pay for that. Don't be contemptuous of your damn sales and marketing people, because you're bloody lucky that you've got them, and they're rare people. And that's also true of that set of skills that that's a set of skills you need to develop if you're a creative person and an artist. Don't be contemptuous of that with your false romanticism.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't have to sell it. It's a great product in and of itself, and all I'm doing is selling out.
Yeah.
It's like most people don't sell out because they never have the damn opportunity. And so if you can manage the sales, and then you think, well, I'm going to maintain my artistic purity despite the fact that you could manage the sales, well, then you're making an ethical decision. But if you're not selling out because no one wants what you're doing, that's no moral victory. Okay, so let's say that you're a person that procrastinates and you don't get things done. Maybe you're creative, you have other things going for you. I would say, well, learn to use a schedule. And you think, I don't want to be hemmed in by a damn schedule, and it feels like a prison. And fair enough, man, it is a form of prison. But
it's also a form of order.
well, this is and it's also a precondition for additional successful creative endeavors. So one of the things I recommend for people to do is to use a calendar like Google Calendar, but not to design the day they should have. Use the calendar to design the day that you would want to have, because you can make a calendar your friend if you don't make it a tyrant.
Yeah.
So you don't want to build a tyrant into the system. You want to be intelligent about it, because if you're going to schedule your time, you have to understand that there are things that you need to do, that you should do, because if you don't do them, you're going to fall behind, and that will be counterproductive. It isn't because someone's wagging their finger at you and saying that this is a moral imperative, even though that might be part of it. It's because there are obligations that you have to fulfill, or you fall farther behind and the obligations get bigger.
Yeah.
And that's a bad pathway. So you have to build some of that into the schedule, but a lot of it can be, well, okay, tomorrow, I want to have the sort of day that I would really be pleased at having by the end of the day. And I want to build in a schedule that I would stick to as well. And so you have to have some appreciation for your own weaknesses. Lay out a schedule and you think, well, would someone like me actually do that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then you modify the schedule until you think that you would do it and that you would be pleased if you did do it. And then the schedule can start to become your friend. And I think if you're not a person who's orderly by nature, the schedule has to be your friend, because otherwise you won't use it. There isn't a lot of difference, or the boundaries between sales and marketing and communicating are blurry. It's like, well, you know, people are also very skeptical, for example, of advertising and find it intrusive. But you know, if you actually want to buy something, an advertisement is quite helpful.
Yeah.
So what people really don't like are badly targeted ads.
Yeah.
And you know, the advertising people are trying to solve that problem. But if you have done something brilliant and original and no one knows about it and no one ever will, well, that might even be more of a catastrophe than never having done it at all, because then you have this thing that's actually of value and you have to suffer with the fact that no one knows about it, right? No, you have to conjoin that ability to produce creatively with the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
And sales and marketing is
And
an
then
integral part of
commercialize.
that. Well, that's the next complex problem. And, you know, and people often who are artists, they're also contemptuous of the commercial world. Well, everything has a price. It's like, well, there's actually some real advantage to everything having a price, you know, because it helps you value your work in a cooperative endeavor.
Yeah.
And it also puts a limitation of sorts on you, because you need limitations. It's like, well, if you have an idea, let's say you're creative, you have a whole bunch of ideas. It's like, well, which ideas should you pursue? Well, one constraint you can use is something like, if the idea that I'm interested in has absolutely no commercial viability, then maybe I should put it lower in the priority list. Because you need some mechanism to put things lower in the priority list. One of our rules for product development was that, well, we had to like the idea. It had to be compelling. We wanted it not to do harm to people. We wanted it to help people. We wanted it to be scalable. But then we also decided very early on that we weren't going to make things that wouldn't generate a profit, because it was a constraint. It's like, well, if we can't do all those other things and make a profit, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
So and that's helpful if you have too many ideas.
And what people don't understand is profit is required to reinvest back into infrastructure for growth and everything else.
That's the other thing. No kidding. Well, the other thing too is we could get the ethics about this right. It's like, well, is there something wrong with generating money? It's like, well, it depends on what you're going to do with the money. You know, like if you're going to spend it all on hookers and cocaine, then probably that's reprehensible. But if you're going to...
Well, it still employs the hookers.
Well,
you know, it's still a commercial.
That's right. The hookers might not think it's reprehensible. I suppose neither do the cocaine growers. But you know, you can argue that there are better and worse things that you could do with your money. If you're guilty about making money, then maybe you should think harder about what the hell you're going to do with the money, because there's some good things you can do with the money.
And why you feel guilty about making money in the first place, and where that comes from.
Yeah. And what's productive about? You say, well, I don't want to be greedy. It's like, okay. Don't be greedy. Good rule. But you know, you have a family, you could support them, you could invest the money in the community. There's all sorts of positive things that you could do with your money if you were very, very thoughtful about how you decided to spend it and do something useful with it and productive. Yeah, that's and I would say that's also if you happen to be one of those people to whom money is disproportionately flowing, right, because you've started to become successful and you've hit that acceleration point where you're getting more because you already have, then the ethical requirement isn't to be guilty about that, but to think, okay, how can I use this money which I have been bequeathed in the most responsible manner possible? And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to think, and you can do that with some error. You need a meaning to sustain you through life, and most of that meaning is actually to be found, and this goes back to the idea of conscientiousness that we were talking about earlier, it's in the adoption of responsibility that most people find the fundamental meanings in their life. That's really worth knowing, because you might ask, well, why should I be responsible? The answer is, well, you need to do something meaningful, because otherwise life suffering will make you bitter. And bitter is only where you start, it's not where you end.